Everybody will come to order, and I want to apologize for being a bit late. We did have some votes on the floor, so I appreciate your indulgence. Ladies and gentlemen, in 1994, as we all know, the East African nation of Rwanda experienced one of the most horrific genocides in modern times. An estimated 800,000 Rwandans, mostly ethnic Tutsis and moderates among the ethnic Hutus, were brutally murdered in a state-backed extermination campaign that lasted for months. Hutu-Tutsi tensions, of course, date back to colonial times when the Belgians created a superior class composed of Tutsis, shutting out Hutus from government jobs and higher education, despite the Hutus comprising about 85% of the population. In 1959 and in 1960, tensions among the Hutus exploded in a campaign that left 20,000 Tutsis dead and created about 300,000 Tutsi refugees. As with this earlier genocide, the international community watched largely from the sidelines during the 1994 genocide in Rwanda, as the death toll rose from April until July of that year, until the Rwandan Patriotic Front, or RPF, defeated the Hutu-led government military. More than 2 million mostly Hutu refugees flooded into the Democratic Republic of Congo, leading to continuing problems in that country. The RPF-led Rwandan government has criticized the United Nations for sheltering Hutu participants in the genocide and for allowing them to arm in refugee camps. Over the years, the RPF has used the guilt of the international community as a shield to prevent criticism of its action. UN Ambassador Samantha Power referred to Ambassador Susan Rice and her colleagues in the Clinton administration in the 1990s as bystanders to genocide. She quotes Dr. Rice in the 2002 book saying, "If we use the word genocide and we are seen as doing nothing, and what will be the effect on the November congressional election?" she asked. Part of Rice's team during those years was Gail Smith, the current nominee to head the U.S. Agency for International Development. As far back as May of 1998, I chaired a hearing, and I chaired many hearings on the genocide, but at this one included testimony about the willful U.S. neglect in preventing the Rwandan genocide. As recounted in the issue of New Yorker magazine at the time, a high-ranking Rwandan informant had warned the UN leadership, including Kofi Annan, and we actually had a hearing on the famous fax that was sent, and we had the reporter who broke that story, and the United States about preparations for killing 3 months before they actually began. And we all will recall that the UN peacekeepers had actionable information that went unacted upon. Furthermore, the United States has been accused of not merely of inaction, but also of obstructing preemptive multilateral efforts to quell the crisis. Some have alleged that, in the words of Refugees International President Lionel Rosenblatt, who also testified at my hearings, and he said, and I quote in pertinent part, "The ball was not only dropped by the United States, it was blocked by the United States." Paul Kagame, now president of Rwanda, was hailed as one of Africa's new leaders by Dr. Rice and her team during the 1990s, and there has been no apparent change in their high opinion of him since then, despite what Deputy Assistant Secretary Robert Jackson describes as several public administration statements related to human rights concerns and the ongoing dialogue with the Rwandan government. Matter of fact, Secretary Jackson, I'm very glad that you very clearly and unambiguously point out that activities that are seen by the government as possible threats of national security or the political dominance of the government RPF are often met with intolerance and harsh punishments. And you point out again, over the past year, Rwandans have quietly reported the disappearances and suspected deaths of family members at the hands of the Rwandan security services. These reports, as you go on to say, come from a wide cross-section of Rwandan society, cutting across geographical, socioeconomic, and ethnic lines. In the Human Rights Report, it is clear, a little bit ambiguous the way it's written. It says there are fewer reports of disappearances and politically motivated abductions or kidnappings than in previous years. But local human rights organizations ceased investigating disappearances in 2012 after reporting pressure from the government officials, including threats and allegations of treason. President Kagame, I would go on to say, has been considered a hero on the international stage and has long been immune and I say this regrettably, to public criticism. However, human rights reports about abuses in Rwanda have grown over the years. And as I just quoted, there was much been said by our Assistant Secretary and others within the administration. In recent years, there have been credible reports that the RPF government has commissioned assassins to kill dissidents living in exile who criticize the government or attempt to form political associations or parties. Several years ago, our committee chairman, Ed Royce, and I were told face-to-face by Paul Rusena of Hotel Rwanda fame that the Rwandan government had targeted him and was behind several attempts on his life in Belgium. I mean, people can snicker and laugh, but frankly, he told us that, and he was very worried about his own personal safety. In early 2014, former Rwandan intelligence chief Faustin Kayumba, who had been living in exile in South Africa, was found murdered in his hotel room in Johannesburg. Kayumba was one of two dissidents. One of our witnesses today, former Rwandan Major Robert Higero, says he was asked to have killed. He was asked to be the assassin. The assassination plot, he revealed, was investigated and substantiated in a series of articles in Canada's Globe and Mail newspaper, which interviewed Rwandan exiles in South Africa and in Belgium. Since 2012, this subcommittee has held a series of hearings on the violence perpetuated by various militia in eastern DRC. Perhaps the best known of them, the so-called M23, was supported by Rwanda. This Congress has enacted restrictions on some military assistance to Rwanda in response to its involvement in militia activity in the DRC, and involvement in resource smuggling from that country as uncovered in several UN reports. These charges of serious human rights and other abuses will be troubling in any case, but Rwanda is a country that has enjoyed significant U.S. and international support. By largely avoiding criticism of Rwandan human rights issues, the Bush and Obama administrations raised appropriations to Rwanda from $39 million in 2003 to $188 million. And some of it is for very laudable goals, like UN peacekeeping and some of the health initiatives, including food security. But again, some of it has been for other issues. Rwanda, due to donor aid, political stability, and favorable investor policies, has grown by an average of 8% over the last decade. Yet donors began reducing or redirecting funds in 2012 because of Rwanda's role in supporting M23. The growing reports of human rights abuses also are leading to caution among donor nations about directly supporting the Rwandan government. And this hearing is going to focus on that. We have two very distinguished witnesses that I will introduce shortly. I'd like to yield to our distinguished